Welcome to Investors Insights, episode 164. Today we'll be discussing the Fed, OPEC meetings this week, and then also a big economic week ahead in terms of reports coming out. So let's jump right in.
You're listening to Investors Insights with Greg Powell and the Portfolio Strategy team from Five Land Partners.
Ashley, good morning.
Good morning, Bobby. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Greg and Trey are out this morning, so it's just the two of us. First, we want to make sure that everyone had a great Memorial Day weekend and great holiday. Thank you to those who have served. Let's just jump right in here. So last week was a big week.
Yes.
All about the Fed. Janet Yellen came out and spoke, said that the rate hike looked appropriate in the coming months. And so they meet again in June 14th and 15th. And so everything, is going to be looking towards the Fed, what she says. She's actually talking next Monday. So she was actually at an event at Harvard this past week where she was receiving an award. And she really didn't go into the details. Right. But she did say a rate hike would be appropriate. But and so hopefully we'll get more next Monday. She does have a speech on the calendar, so hopefully we'll get more information then. Also, a lot of things going on. Why a lot of questions have been asked. What's the big deal about the Fed? We always talk about it. It's going on. And the two things is, when the Fed raised in December, the market fell 12% in the following weeks.
Right.
And so if they raise in June, what's going to happen? It's going to fall again. Plus, you have the uncertainty of the election. And so we're watching that carefully. Like I said, a lot of economics report are coming out this week.
It is.
And then one is consumer spending. Consumer spending came out this morning, actually, and it was posted the biggest gain in 6 years. That's very important. Excuse me. Hopefully all of the gas savings at the pump, consumers are starting to spend. So that's very positive and also gives Janet Yellen and the Fed some ammo. But talk about the Fed, OPEC this week.
Yes, kind of what mates right into that is that OPEC is meeting this week. What's significant about that is the first full meeting with the new OPEC minister from Saudi Arabia. Trey told you on the vlog a few weeks back that had happened. What's interesting about that, Bobby and I were talking about that this morning, an OPEC oil minister in Saudi Arabia is almost like a Supreme Court justice in the United States or a Federal Reserve chairman. They could serve for years. Yeah. As a matter of fact, this new minister has only had two predecessors going back to the oil embargo in the 1970s. So that shows you how long they serve generally. So it'll be very interesting this week to see what he sort of does at the helm, if you will, of an OPEC meeting, really his first meeting there. And what his agenda will be. People will start to get a read for what his policies are, which now are different than they were basically 10, 20 years ago. Each OPEC oil minister has more of an agenda they try to follow. Bobby and I were talking this morning, you're not going to see a production limit this week coming out of that. They'll still go full bore with that. But on the oil and gas prices, to Bobby's point about consumer spending, that $50 per barrel range, kind of where we seem to be right now, is a very interesting inflection point because it's not high enough like up in the 80s, 90s where you've got large companies doing big CapEx projects, putting another pipeline down, putting a lot more rigs out. But now back up at $50, you don't have the bleeding that you were having at a lot of the U.S. producers that we've had about the last year or two as it's dropped. But it's still low enough, so it's kind of stabilized that, and that's good for that employment. But to Bobby's point on consumer spending, that $50 per barrel range is still cheap enough to still be spurring this consumer spending. And I think that's part of what we've seen in the numbers on that Bobby talked about.
Finally. Finally. We've had low oil prices for 18 months. Consumer spending has stayed low.
Yes.
And so this report that came out this morning is very encouraging.
It is.
For consumer spending.
Yes.
So, like I said, we've got a big week ahead. Let's see. Thursday, we got jobless claims, ADP jobs report, and then Friday, the government jobs report comes out with the unemployment rate. In April, the last report we received on jobs was actually lower than previous months, and so we want to, hopefully that trend will reverse itself and go back up, and we'll watch that closely. So, thank you for watching. Please call in if you have any questions or email. Thanks so much. Have a great week.